Good morning, everyone. So, today we are going to do some questions that have come up in the TCS NQT, that is Tata Consultancy Services National Qualified Test that they conduct every year for students to get into their companies. So, they look for the best talents around the nation, and for that they have been conducting an online test, which comes up in sets to the students. So the test that they're going to give up or the test that they have given this year to the students, I have some questions from that and we are going to solve those questions. The pattern for TCS NQT online test, they give 5 sections. Out of that, there is a pseudocode section where you have to code according to the preference of your language. That can be C, C++, Java, SQL, or Perl, Oracle, Python. Accordingly, you can choose. Then there is programming MCQs that we do based on data structure. Then OOPS, Java, JavaScript. Accordingly, they'll ask questions based on C, C++, and all the programming languages. Then they have a portion for aptitude and reasoning ability where they give questions based on different aspects of aptitude and reasonings. Like there are topics that are from time and work. There are questions from permutations and combinations. There are questions from profit and loss. There are questions from trigonometry, probability, data arrangement, blood relation. All those questions are there. And the test that was conducted this year, it came out in three different sets. So the question that I'm going to do today, they are based from set number A. They're from set A. So I have some questions from set A. We are going to look at those questions and try to solve out those questions in as less time as possible with maximum understanding. So the first question that came up: on a toss of two dice, A throws a total of five. Find the probability that he throws another five before he throws seven. Okay, so we are going to deal with the sum of the dice should be seven. So 5 can be, he needs to have a 5 before he goes on to 7. So 5 can be obtained in four ways. I can have the sum of two dice as 4 in four ways, like 1 comma 4, 2 comma 3, 3 comma 2, or 4 comma 1. For a dice, there is no option that it is 0 comma 5. For a dice, the possible options are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And with this combination, I have to get a total of 5. Combinations possible for 5 are 1, 4. That is, on the first dice I have 1, on the second dice I have 4. Similarly, 2, 3, 3, 2, or 4, 1. If I need to talk about 7, how can I obtain 7? So I can obtain 7 in 6 ways. 7 can be obtained in 1 comma 6, contrary to 6 comma 1, then 2 comma 5, the reverse of it 5 comma 2, 3 comma 4, and the reverse of it 4 comma 3. These are the 6 ways in which 7 can be obtained. Total number of ways. Total number of ways when two dice are rolled together, the total possibilities that are coming up, it is equal to 36. So total number of ways that are possible when two dice are rolled out, it is 36. Okay, so number of ways of throwing neither, I'm talking about neither 5 or 7. Number of ways in which I'm getting neither 5 or nor 7. That becomes 36 is my total number of ways minus the ways in which I'm getting a 5 or a 7. So 5 can be obtained in 4 ways, 7 can be obtained in 6 ways. When we subtract that, I get number of ways when I'm neither getting 5 nor 7 comes out to be in these 26 ways. But another thing that I want to know, probability of throwing a 5 in a single throw with a single pair of dice. I found out that neither 5 nor 7 could be obtained in 26 ways. But what is the probability that I'm getting a sum as 5? If I need to find out that. In 4 ways, I'm getting 5. Total ways are 36. So probability of getting sum as 5, it's 1 upon 9. Next thing, and probability of getting neither 5 nor 7, I know total number of ways possible is 26. which I'm not getting 5 or 7, and the total number of possibilities are 36. So this becomes 13 by 18. So I have two probabilities where I'm getting sum as 5, it's 1 by 9. Sum neither 5 nor 7, it's 13 by 18. Now, since the person has already thrown a 5, it is a number which is different than 7. He may throw 5 at the next attempt. The probability is 1 by 9 of getting a 5. Or he may throw 5 at the second attempt and he fails to get either a 5 or a 7 at the first attempt. The probability for which, now the probabilities, they will go on getting multiplying. So it's like I'm throwing a dice. Either I'm getting a 5 or I'm getting a 7 or I'm not getting any of that. So for at the first attempt I'm either getting 5 or 7. If I'm getting it, well and good, otherwise I'm moving to the second attempt, for the probability for which becomes 13 by 18 into 1 by 9. Next, at the third attempt I can be getting a 5 before I get a 7, then it becomes 13 by 18 the whole square into 1 by 9, and it will go on adding up all the possibilities. We will get our answer. So it's like, find the probability that he throws another 5 before he throws another 7. It will go on getting multiplied. Required probability. Required probability. It's like, first I got 1 by 9, that is sum as 5. In the next throw, I'm neither getting a 5 nor I'm getting a 7. Then again I'm throwing not getting a 5 and a 7. Again I'm throwing all these probabilities. When you add up, it becomes a infinite GP. When we add up all the probabilities, it becomes a infinite GP whose first term, whose A becomes 1 by 9, and the common ratio R, it becomes 13 by 18. So when we add all of that, sum of an infinite GP, I know it is S is equals to A upon 1 minus R. So when we do this, that will give me the probability of getting a 7 or a 5. It will come out to be 1 upon 9 divided by 1 minus 13 by 18. On solving this, it comes out to be 2 by 5. And 2 by 5, when we convert into percentage, it becomes 40%. So answer to this question, it's A, 40%. Only thing that we have followed, first we found out probability of throwing a 5 in a single throw with a pair of dice, it is 1 by 9. Next we found out probability of throwing neither a 5 nor a 7, it's 13 by 18. Now, since he has already thrown a 5, that is a number different from 7, he may throw 5 at the next attempt, the probability for which is 1 by 9. The probability for which I know is 1 by 9, or he may throw 5 at the second attempt when he fails to throw either a 5 or 7 at the first attempt. So, if at the first attempt I'm not getting a 5, I will throw it again. The probability for which it becomes 13 by 18 into 1 by 9. Now again, if I failed in the second attempt, I'll go for a third attempt. Again, it will be 13 by 18 into 13 by 18 into 1 by 9, and it will go on. When we add up all of that, we get the possibility of getting a 5 by 7, which is sum of infinite GP. A upon 1 minus R. A is my starting term, that is 1 by 9. R is the common difference, 13 by 18. On doing the sum of this infinite GP, I get the answer is 2 by 5, comes out to be 40%. My answer is option A. Next question. Three dice are rolled. What is the probability of getting sum of the numbers as 10? Okay, three dice. Again, three dice are rolled. I'm getting the sum of the numbers as 10. Number on the first die plus number on the second die plus number on the third die should be equal to 10. This is what we need to calculate. So we are going to go for case wise. First, we're going to assume the biggest number that is possible on the first die, and accordingly we can set up the rest of the dice. So biggest number possible for any die, it's 6. If it is 6 on the first one, next biggest number possible is 3, because 0 is not an option for die. Next possible is 1. Okay. So if 6, 3 and 1, first I've assumed that 6 is there on the first die, 3 is there on the first, and is 1 is there on the third die. This is my one way of doing the arrangement. Next possibility for these three numbers only is first number is getting 6, that is okay, but second die gets 3 and the third die it is getting 1. So I'm just interchanging the position of 1 and 3. This is one arrangement that is possible. Now the first die which got 6, it might have got 3. The second die might have got 6, and the last die might have got 1. This is also possible. Still, I'm getting the sum as A. When I do all these arrangements, it becomes arranging three numbers at three positions. I know if I need to arrange three numbers at three positions, it is equal to 3 factorial. So 3 factorial is equals to 6. So if it is 6, 3 and 1, I'll have 6 ways of arranging them. Next case, if we move on to next case, is the next big number 6 is here, but another possibility is 2 and 2. Both of them have got 2 and 2. Again, three numbers at three possible places, it's 3 factorial, but now there is a 2 that is repeated. So I'll do a divided by 2 factorial. Whenever for any factorial or for any finding probability, if there is number that is repeated, I divide by that number factorial which is repeated. So 3 factorial divided by 2 factorial, my answer comes out to be 3. So 3 ways will be there when it is 6, 2 and 2. There will be 3 ways. Next possible case, assuming the next bigger number, it's 5. Next die gets 4 and the third die gets 1. So 5, 4 and 1. Again, the sum is equal to 10. Three numbers at three different places. The possible number of ways is 3 factorial, that is 6 ways. Next possibility, we have 5, 3 and 2. Again giving me the sum as 10. Three numbers, three places, 3 factorial. My answer is 6 number of ways. Next possibility, fifth case, 4, 3 and 3. If it is 4, 3 and 3, total number of ways becomes 3 factorial, that is 3 numbers at 3 positions, but a repetition of 2 is there. So it becomes 3 factorial divided by 2 factorial. My answer comes out to be 3. Now these are the all possible cases that are there. Other than that, I'm not going to get a 10. So for 10, it is 6, 6, then 5, 4. Other than that, there is no other way, or if there is any other way, it is already considered in all these cases. So total number of cases becomes 6 plus 3 plus 6 plus 6 plus 3. That is, if we add all of them, it comes out to be, okay, all the cases are already considered. Last case, one more case that we can consider here is two die are having 4 and one die is having 2. One more case that we can consider. So two dies are having 4, one die is having 2, again 10. So this becomes 3 factorial divided by 2 factorial. Again, it's 3. Okay. Total number of ways, total number of favorable outcomes, we can say it becomes 9 plus 9 plus 9, that is 27 ways I'm getting sum as 10. Total number of ways when 3 dice are rolled simultaneously, it's 6 cubed, that is 216. What is the probability? Probability is favorable outcomes 27 divided by total number of outcomes 216. When we match the options, my answer is option A given directly in the options. Important thing is considering all the cases that are possible. Not to forget any of the case, not to forget anywhere that can give me a sum 10. Okay, next question. How many 6-digit even numbers can be formed from the digits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 so that the digits do not repeat and the second last digit is even? Okay, important thing regarding permutations and combinations is we do not take repetitions unless it is mentioned in the question. By default, there is no repetitions and permutations and combinations. If we are taking repetition, it has to be mentioned in the question. Usually the question would say do not, where the numbers do not repeat or where the alphabets do not repeat. That has to be considered always. Okay, six digit number needs to be formed. Let's form six spaces. Now, we have a choice of seven numbers. So total choices available to us: one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. To form a even number, the last digit should be even. So the last digit can be either 2, 4, or 6. The last place that we have, it can now be filled in three ways. It is very important that whatever the condition is given to us, that is first considered. So last digit can be filled in three ways. But we need the second last place also to be even. So now it can be filled in only two ways, because out of the three even numbers, one is obviously going to be occupied at the ones place. So only two would be available that can be filled up at the tens place. Repetition is not allowed. So it becomes two ways for tens place, three ways for the last place. Remaining places now will start filling up from the sixth position from the MSB that was available to us. Okay, so two digits, two numbers already gone. MSB will have five possible digits that can come up here. One will be used here. Next, four. One will again be used here. Next place, three ways. Next place, two ways. And last two places we have already defined, that is two and two. Total number of ways becomes 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 2 into 3, that is equals to 720 ways. So in how many ways six digit even number can be formed if the second last place is also even? Answer is option B, 720 ways. Important thing is to consider the condition given to us, that is no repetition, first thing. Second thing, second last place is also even. Important. Next question. How many liters of 90% concentrated acid needs to be mixed with 75% concentrated acid to get a 30-liter solution of 78% concentrated acid? This question can be solved using the Webb method that we have. So we can go for the Webb method or the cross difference method. Webb or cross difference, as we like to call it, we can go by this method. So first concentration, it's 90%. Next concentration, 75%. In middle, we'll write the resultant. So resultant, I need a 78% concentrated solution. What happens? We take the difference in across. We take the difference in cross. So 90 minus 78 is 12. So we are going to write 12 here. 78 minus 75 will be done, because obviously the number that is going to come up here are going to be positive numbers. So we'll do 78 minus 35, answer is 3. It would be written out here. So always do the subtraction in crosses. Answer comes out to be required ratio is 3 is to 12. That is the ratio in which 90% concentrated acid needs to be mixed with 75% concentrated. It's 3 is to 12. Reducing becomes 1 is to 4. So first, this is the first acid, this is my second acid. 1 is to 4 is the ratio in which it needs to be mixed. So I need to find the quantity of 90 liters. The ratio of 90 liters is 1. So quantity becomes 1 by 5 into 30. That is 6 liters of 90% concentrated acid needs to be mixed. So my answer comes out to be 6 liters. Important thing here is to take into consideration the cross as to how the difference is done. The ratio where that we have got, it is the ratio of 90% and 75% to concentrated acids. In what ratio they are mixed, then we have the overall quantity of the solution. From there we can find out what is the quantity of my first solution. Answer is 6 liters. Next question. Average marks of three students A, B, C is 48. When another student D joins the group, the new average becomes 47 marks. If another student E joins who has 3 marks more than D, average of four students B, C, D, and E becomes 48 marks. How many marks did A get in the exam. So I'm taking the same variables A, B, C, and D for the marks obtained by them respectively. So first thing is given to us average of A, B, and C. It's 48. I know average is equals to sum of the quantities divided by the number of observations that we have, or the number of terms that we have. So average is sum of the quantities divided by the number of terms available to us. Okay. So total score of A, B, and C, A plus B plus C divided by 3 is equals to 48. Cross multiplying A plus B plus C is 48 into 3 is 144. First equation. Okay, first condition taken into consideration. Next, another person is D joining the group, new average becomes 47 marks. Another person A plus B plus C and another person D joins, number of terms becomes 4, new average is 47. Cross multiplication A plus B plus C plus D equals 47 into 4, 188. Second equation. Now from first I can put out the value of A plus B plus C equals to 144 in the second equation. When we do this, I get the value of marks of D. So marks of D comes out to be 44. Okay. I need the marks of A. For that, I need one more condition so that I can have somewhere the marks of B and C also I can put out in the first equation and get the answer. So D is obtained to us. Let's look at the next condition. Another student E joins who has 3 marks more than D. Okay, marks of E, it's D plus 3. So E becomes D is 43, 43 plus 3. E has 43 marks. Okay, now average of B, C, D, and E is becoming 48. So B plus C plus D plus E divided by 4 becomes 48. Okay. B plus C plus D plus E. If we do the cross multiplication, doing the cross multiplication, B plus C plus D plus E, 48 into 4 becomes 192. Okay, 48 plus 4 becomes 192. Value of D I have, value of E I have. We can put the value of B plus C here. We can get the value of B plus C because D is already known 44, E is already known 47. B plus C comes out to be 101. D is known, E is known. Putting there, I get the value of B plus C. Now, when we put out the value of B plus C in the first equation, putting out the value of B plus C in first equation. So A plus 101 becomes 144. The value of A comes out to be 43. That is the marks obtained by A in the exams. It's 43. Very simple question. Only thing into consideration was my average is sum of the quantities divided by the number of terms, and whatever subsequent conditions given to us, they need to be followed very strictly. Next question. On a certain assembly line, the rejection rate for Hyundai i10s production was 4%, for Hyundai i20s production is 8%, and for the two cars combined is 7%. What was the ratio of Hyundai i20 and i10 production? Okay, again I need to find the ratio of two models of cars. Here also I can use the cross difference method or the web method, whatever we want to call it. Cross difference method can again be used. So if I have I10 and I20, if I write it out here, I10 rejection ratio was 4%. I20 rejection ratio was 8%. Combined, it is 7%. So this is like a mixture only. I have one acid whose concentration is 4%, another acid whose concentration is 8%. Both of them are mixed. I get a resultant whose concentration is 7%. So what is the ratio in which they are mixed? Consider it like that type of question. So here also we can use the cross difference. So 7 minus 4, it's 3%. Write it down. 8 minus 7, it's 1%. So percent gets cancelled out. Ratio of I10 is to I20 is known, 1 is to 3. But I need the ratio of I-20 is to I-10. Reverse the ratio, it becomes 3 is to 1. My answer is simply 3 is to 1. A lot of us, they would get involved into taking the variables, then assuming that 4% is defective and doing by the traditional method. No need to go for by that. Very simply, we can go by the cross difference method. Consider them like two acids that are mixed together and having the answer in the same way. Next question. If A is given to us as x cube y square, A is x cube y square, B is x y cube, and we need to have the HCF of A and B. Okay, so first step, what I'm going to do, I'm going to write it as multiplication of variables so that I can clearly see what A and B is made up of. So A, I'm writing x cube y square as x into x into x, y into y into y. Then x into y cube, x into y into y into y. To find the HCF, we must select the highest common factor for A and B. HCF, as the name suggests, it is the highest common factor, which is the highest common power of the variables that is being involved. So if for x we consider the highest common power for x is x raised to power 1 into highest common power for y. Y here is square, here is cube. So highest common power is square. So HCF of A and B, it becomes x into y square. My answer is option B. Simply, when we have two expressions, whichever variable out of the two has the least powers, that becomes the answer in terms of multiplication. So here the least power of x available was x, least power of y available was y square. So x into y square becomes my HCF. Next question. Akbar, Benoit and Cinder takes 20, 80 and 160 days respectively to complete a work. If each work one day alternatively, on which day will they complete the task? Okay. So question given to us talking about three people, they're doing a task on different number of days. They work one day alternatively, on which day will they complete the work. So we know that work would be completed when it is one or it is 100% totally done. I will not say if three-fifths of the work is done, my work is complete, or 78% of the work is done, it is complete. It always has to be either one or 100%. Another way of representing your total work is taking the LCM in which complete work is done, in those number of days where complete work is done. So A, B, and C, let me call them, they can do the complete work in 20, 80, and 160 days. So taking LCM of 20, 80, and 160, when we do this, it comes out to be 160 units. So either they are doing one complete work or they are doing 160 units of work, it is nothing different. After this, I'm going to find out the efficiencies of the three people. So efficiency I'm going to represent by E. E of A means efficiency of A. Efficiency of A is how much work that person has done in one day. So Akbar is actually taking 20 days to complete 160 units. In one day, Akbar would be doing 160 by 20, 8 units per day. Next, talking about efficiency of B, total taken 80 days, need to do 160 units. In one day, the person is doing 2 units per day. So efficiency of Benoit, it's 2 unit per day. Efficiency of Cinder, if we talk about 160 unit needs to be done, 160 days is taken. Efficiency becomes 1 unit per day. Now they're working on alternate days. If they're working on alternate days, that means they will be completing 8 units plus 2 units plus 1 unit, that is 11 unit they'll be doing in 3 days. Now they're working in alternate days, that means they'll be doing 11 units in every 3 days. So they'll be completing 22 units in 6 days, 33 units in 9 days, 44 units in 12 days, and it will go on. So until where I have to consider, I will consider up till 154 units that they're going to complete in 42 days. They're going to complete 154 units in 42 days. That we can go on doing the multiplication, we can go on increasing 333 days, and we can see how much work is being completed in that many days. Okay, so 154 units they have done in 42 days. Remaining, if we talk about remaining work, is 160 units needs to be done. 142 units is already done. 154 units is already done in 42 days. So remaining work is 6 units. So remaining work needs to be done, remaining 6 units need to be done. So until 42 days it is done. On which day will they complete the task? Okay, so until 42nd day everything is 42nd day 154 units done. On 43rd day these 6 units of work would be done. Okay, so on 43rd day they are going to complete the task because now only 6 units are remaining. Let's say, let's assume that Akbar comes to work out first. Let's say Akbar comes to work out first. Akbar is doing 8 units in one day. Okay, so Akbar would complete it within the first day only. But even now, some might say that Akbar is doing 8 units per day and so he will be able to do it on the 43rd day. What if Benoit or Cinder came out first? If we assume Benoit or Cinder to start the work first, then also the answer will not change. So in this question, we need to find the exact time in which the work will get completed. That is why we cannot say that Benoit will start the work or Cinder will start the work. I need to have the exact day. So for that, the assumption that Akbar will come out to do the work, that is important. Cannot assume that Benoit or Cinder will start doing the work. Because according to the options also, the highest number available to me is 43rd. So that is why it is important that Akbar is the one who comes out to work on the 43rd day. Answer is, on which day the work will be completed? Work would be completed on the 43rd day. Next question. The minute hand of a clock is 9 centimeters and hour hand is 7 centimeters. If they run for 3 days, how much distance is covered by them in both? How much distance is covered by both the hands? Okay, so we know that a minute hand, it makes 24 revolutions in a day, and our hand, it is going to make only 2 revolutions in one day. So minute hand would make 24 revolutions, our hand will make only 2 revolutions in one day. Now the length of these hands are the radius of the circular clock that they're going to cover up. So the length that is given to us, both these lengths, these are the radius that we have to consider. Okay, now important thing, what is the distance covered by both of them? The distance covered by both of them, it is going to be equal to the perimeter of the circles that these two are going to make out. So distance is going to be equal to the perimeter of circle that these two hands are going to make out. Okay, distance moved by minute hand, it is going to be 2 pi into 9. 9 is the radius, 2 pi r into number of revolutions made in one day is 24, number of days run out is 3. So when we multiply this, it will come out to be 1296 pi, because all the answers are given in terms of pi. So let it be in terms of pi only. So it's 2 pi, 9 is my radius, 24 is revolutions per day, and 3 is number of days for which it is moving. Okay, distance covered by our hand. Again, 2 pi into radius is 7. Revolutions in one day, 2. Number of days, 3. So this is the number of days. This is the revolution per day. This is the radius. When we do the multiplication, comes out to be 84 pi. How much distance is covered by both of them? It becomes 84 pi plus 1296 pi. On addition, my answer comes out to be 1380 pi. That is option D. Very simply, just finding the distance, it is equal to the perimeter of the circles that these two are going to find out. Important thing here is how much revolutions these two hands they make in one day. Then 2 pi r into revolutions per day into day, adding up, we get the answer. Next question. It is given A alone can finish the work in 10 hours, B in 12, C in 15. Then they work together starting at 11 a.m. After 2 hours, A leaves, B and C together work to finish the task. At what time work will be completed? Okay. So let's assume how much work that they have to do. We have just done it, that total work that they have to do is equals to LCM of the time or in which the work is being completed. It can be hours, it can be days, it can be minutes, anything. So they have to do 60 units of work. Next, we can find out efficiencies. So efficiency is how much work they are going to do. So efficiency of A is taking 10 hours, has to complete 60 units. We'll be doing 60 by 10 equals to 6 units per hour. There it was 6 units per day. Here it is 6 units per hour. 60 by B is taking 12 hours, becomes 5 units per hour. Okay, now for C, 60 divided by 15, because C is taking 15 hours, becomes 4 units per hour. Okay, until here it is clear. Now A, B, C they start working at 11 a.m. After 2 hours A is leave. We are going to form a timeline. This question could be done using a work timeline. In work timeline, as many portions I might divide the work timeline into, the total work that all the people have to do will always be equal to this 60 units, or will always be equal to the LCM that is being found out. So for 2 hours they're working together. That means A, B, and C they're working together. They're working for 2 hours. Now A leaves, B and C are working. And B and C are working. We don't know for how many hours. Let's say that is X hours for which they're working together. Okay, so A, B, and C when they work together, they will be doing 6 plus 4, 4, 10, 10 plus 5, 15 units per hour they're going to do. And they're working for 2 hours. That means when they work together for 2 hours, they have already done 30 units when A is leaving. So 30 units is already done. 60 units needs to be done. Remaining work again equals to 30 units. Now this 30 units would be done by B and C only. Now since they're going to do the 30 units, B and C together they're doing 5 units and 4 units. That means 9 units they're doing together. And let's say the time they took was X hours. So 9 into X, that is equals to 30 units that they have to complete. X from here would come out to be the time, and it is equal to 30 by 9, that is 10 by 3, that is 3 hours, and this will be 3 1 by 3. I know one third of an hour is 20 minutes. So this 10 by 3 hour that comes out to be, it will be equal to 3 hours and 20 minutes. 3 hours and 20 minutes after what? 3 hours and 20 minutes after the 2 hours that A has left. So they started doing the work at 11 a.m. 2 hours after this is 1 p.m. Now 3 hours 20 minutes. That means 4:20 p.m. is when the work will be completed. So at what time work will be finished? It will be finished at 4 hours and 20 minutes. That is 4:20 p.m. My answer is option C. Important thing here was to consider that when we are converting from hour to minute, one third of an hour can be written as 20 minutes. Also, the drawing of work timeline, it's very important. When someone is leaving, when they're joining, that has to be considered always.